All right, everybody, welcome to the Buckmasters Outdoors Podcast. Today, I'm your host, Rhett Holland. I'm here with Ken Piper, who's also hosting. And today we've got Corey Smith from Kentucky. He just shot the big 266-inch deer up in Ohio a few weeks ago, and we're pleased to have you on today, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it, man. How long have you been hunting? Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so I'm actually from Alaska. I mean, my dad moved up there when I was young. And then, was always big outdoors, hunting, fishing, pretty much my entire life. I didn't actually get into deer hunting till about 7 years ago when I moved back down to the Kentucky area. And then that's where I met my wife and we had 3 kids. I started off with just, rifle season. And then this would be my 6th year or 7th year bow season, doing, bow season. Ever since I got hooked on bow, I haven't really done anything since, with a bow. I've always loved everything about doing outdoors. And the more involved I get, the more excited I get every single year, because you always dream of being able to, go out there and then pursue something that, is already hard enough as it is to pursue, and then be able to have that opportunity is just a blessing.
Absolutely.
Well, Corey, since we posted that photo of your deer, of course, social media has been blowing up, and I guess, your social media has been blowing up. Let's dispel a couple of the rumors right off the bat. This is a free range, 100% whitetail, right?
Absolutely. Yes. We didn't know. So kind of get started on that. We didn't even know this deer really even existed. A friend of mine, Dustin, who's actually one of my best friends, he hunts on my farm down here, and they kind of exchanged because we've never hunted Ohio. He wanted to get us a few spots up there for me and my wife to be able to hunt, and was able to get permission on a small little parcel up in the Ohio area, and trail camera up and just kind of see what was there. And then about August, he went in to check in, and then the first photo was of this deer. And we were just kind of blown away by just how big this deer really was. It just kind of escalated from there, because we really kind of kept it to ourselves. We didn't know who else ever knew about it. We knew it was an older deer. We didn't have a lot of photos of him. It was just really, I think those were really pretty much it. I think maybe we had 2 or 3 more encounters on a trail camera with it, and then that was about it. We had plans on going up there the first open week of bow season, and even then we still didn't have any sightings of him. And I kind of backtrack a little bit. He, as my buddy was going in a week before bow season, he was heading out to and basically there's a soybean field that, we knew he was kind of in the area once since we got those photos. And as he was walking in, he thought it was just some old wheat that was up and, high in the, in the beans. And it was actually him laying out in the middle of the field.
Nice.
And that really sparked my interest, because if he's out there in the middle of the daytime in a field, that's got to be his home area. He wasn't traveling very far. Opening day, I ended up going into the stand. I saw a couple does, and I, as it was starting to get dark, I ended up getting down and started walking back. And as I was walking back, sure enough, about 100 yards away, he's staying in the field feeding. So he actually was probably in the corn, and I didn't see him pop out behind me, and he probably came out when I got down. The next day, we were kind of taking turns. My buddy went in, Dustin, and of course, of all days, he goes in there and he's laying in the exact same spot he saw him the first time. I'm in a different spot. My wife's in a different area, and we get a text message kind of telling us that he just took a shot at him. When he shot, the actual beans got caught up in his cam, which then slowed the arrow down and shot just probably about 5 or 6 yards short of where he, was aiming for.
Was this October, Corey?
Yes, this was the first week of October.
Okay.
So did he try to put a stalk on the deer? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So
Okay.
he crawled basically as close as he could, and he thought he was 50 yards.
Right.
And then the deer was stood up, and he took the shot. Deer didn't run, just kind of stood there, and then laid back down. So he had to crawl back and he had to crawl back to go get another arrow.
He didn't have his quiver with him.
Nope, he put his quiver and stuff down. So he crawled another 100 yards back to where he had his arrow, got it, and brought it back. And then the deer stood back up again, and he's 6'3", 6'4" guy.
Wow.
Itty bitty, trying to hide himself in the beans.
Right.
And the deer didn't know. I mean, kind of looked over there, couldn't figure out what he was, and then turned around and walked away. So he couldn't get another shot on him. Then we're going to go to day 3. My wife ended up going up there, and on our way back, we actually saw him on the other side of the field run right into the corn. So we kind of stood off into the back and just started watching to see if, he would pop back out, and we didn't see him again there. So then the next day we decided to go different ways. My wife hunted it again, and then he came out in the same spot before and started feeding, and was probably about 200 yards away from, so, I mean, she couldn't get a shot obviously, but, just feeding out where he was laying down. And that was our first trip on that, on this specific deer. Now there were other deer that we're going for, he wasn't like my main target. I never thought I'd even be able to even get close to him. So, I was just kind of like, well, we got other deer that we can possibly go for, anything's possible. So we came back up again the beginning of November, because we got sweet November. That's kind of the best time to actually start hunting, especially right before the rut. And our first night, it was the 1st of November, the first, because we left after we took our kids trick-or-treating. We got to my buddy's place probably like around 12:31 a.m. We were up at 5:30 in the morning, and we went to she went to the a different spot, because we only had so many areas that we can hunt, and she went to one area and I went back to the big boy stand, and she's telling me she's seen a bunch of chasing, and I was seeing chasing as well. So we just, because at the time all the fields were already picked, already cut, and I looked to my right, and there's a giant 10 to my right walking out in the middle of the field. And I'm watching him try to grunt, try to rattle. He didn't care. He just kept walking. And then I get a text from my wife, and we haven't even been to stand an hour, and she already punched a tag into one. So, yeah. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she ended up getting one right off the bat.
Getting it done.
Yeah. Done one and done pretty much. So I before I wanted to, I was already excited to get down, and I just went ahead, helped her out with her. We got tagged and everything and got loaded up. And of course my buddy, Dustin was excited. He was all happy. And so I actually didn't sit in that spot the rest of the time we were there. We were only there for 3 days. So I didn't sit in that spot again. It was my buddy's turn to go ahead and hunt as much as he can. And then I didn't tag out. I was like, all right, well, if I have time again, I'll come back up. Well, with the convincing of my wife and and Dustin, he turned around and they were like, you need to come back up. The rut's still on. It's the end of November. You should be able, at least give it a shot. So I went back up again for, I think it was 2 or 3 days. I hunted another bean stand. I couldn't really shoot because of there was some limbs and what in my way, and the deer is probably about 50 yards. I need him closer, but he was a big 10, probably about 180. He was just a giant deer. And
you couldn't pass him.
Yeah, I was trying to go, but he just wouldn't stop. He wouldn't come in. He wouldn't do anything. Dustin had told me, he says, hey, I think you need to go out into the field tonight. Don't hunt in the stand, hunt this little, hunt this creek area. and, just kind of sit down. And I was like, no, I think I'm just going to stick with it. I'm seeing a lot of action on this other side, other side. And he's like, man, I really think you should do this. And I was like, all right, well, he convinced me. I went ahead and sat down on a bucket pretty much, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of weeds. As I'm sitting there, about 30 minutes left of light, I look to my left, and here's that giant 10 that I saw a month prior when I was in that area. And he got in because we have a trail camera right in front of me, probably about 10 feet. Well, he walked right in front of me, and the wind was actually hitting him in the face. So I'm sitting just below, and it's hitting him in the face. And he needed to step to my right, probably about 5 steps for me to be able to take a shot. Well, what he did was he took a turn, and he smelled my track as I walked in. And at that point, he was literally 5 foot in front of me, and I full draw. And I could see his head smelling up and down. And I could see his eyelashes and everything. But I had a group of weeds that were covering his vitals that there was no way I was going to shoot through that.
Right.
And he had to have caught my wind because he ran about 25 yards hard. I mean, literally, looking away from me, and just walked away. So, and I had the pictures of all that from the camera, how it all happened. And that was a crushing moment for me. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I was like, after that, it was pretty heart saddening on my part. So I ended up going back home and pretty much hung up everything. I already tagged out in Kentucky, and my wife already tagged out in Kentucky. She's tagged in Ohio, and there was really no point for me going back.
How long of a trip is it, Corey?
It's about a 4-hour drive.
Ooh, okay.
So I pretty much was kind of done with it. Wasn't going to hunt anymore. Had already put my bow and everything up. And it was about 3 days before I actually went back up there. My buddy been hunting, this deer he probably had 100 sits in it, just trying to hunt this deer. He passed up multiple different bucks because he knew this deer was still alive. And he sends me a photo of him in daylight.
Is this December or January?
This is January.
This is January, and Ohio is what, primitive at this point?
Yeah,
they have a late gun season.
Yeah, they have a late gun season and late muzzleloader, and that's already been passed. Okay. Last bit. I think Ohio's ends on the 7th for bow. So I turned around and I was like, I know he's showing up in daylight, but still, I'm not even going to bother. And my wife turned around and says, you really need to go up there. Take some time. You've been nonstop working. Take some time, go through the weekend, and just go back up there. And Dustin even he says, come on up, And so we had a game, or on my way there, and I left here Saturday morning. On my way there, I told we had a game plan because there's a tree that's we would normally sit in, but since there's no leaves or anything on it, you're not going to have any cover.
Right.
And he has been just sitting back in this little brush area, and I told him, I was like, what if we put a ground blind in? Go buy a muddy ground blind and put that in, and then kind of see what we're going to do here. And I know they were feeding. I know you can, obviously you can still bait in Ohio. So, and it was already a cut cornfield. So we set up the ground blind and kind of sat there because we were already out there. We cleaned everything up, put a bunch of brush around it. And we sat and we didn't see anything, which was kind of, we kind of figured that. And then we went in there in the middle of the night, went ahead and brought a couple bags of corn and some minerals basically mixed in, and just instead of putting it in a pile, we just spread it out everywhere, probably within about a half-acre area. Just spread it all out, not have it condensed in one spot. Well, come Sunday morning, I went ahead and hunted Sunday morning, and the wind started to pick up, but I was like, I think we should be all right. And it hadn't started snowing yet. So I was like, well, maybe they're going to get on their feet before this snowstorm comes through. And so I sat there till about 9:30, 10, didn't see anything, but I knew I could see from previous snow that the deer were eating on that corn, trying to pick through the, everything. So it's like, all right, well, let me see what, because I use different apps. I'll use HuntWise, I'll use DeerCast, I'll use a whole bunch of different apps to try to conclude what the actual movement's going to be. And I went ahead and looked at it, and the pressure was going to start to rise at 3:00. And I was like, all right, well, we need to be in the stand at 3. And the snow is supposed to stop at 4. So if we can get in there at 3, more than likely the movement's going to be around 4 once the wind dies down. Dustin ended up going to his parents and getting back to his house about 1:00 and said, we need to go. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, it's stopping sooner than what it says it's going to. And I ended up looking it back up, and sure enough, pressure was rising at 2:30, not 3, and then the snow was supposed to stop around 3:30. So I was like, all right, let's go. So we got loaded up, got suited up. We walked out there, and we got into the blind, and we were in there just a little after 2.
So you guys are hunting together at this point?
Yeah, we were hunting together. The first evening we hunted together. The second, I hunted by myself. He slept in, and then we actually hunted together that evening as well.
Okay, so was there an agreement of who was going to get to shoot? Or
No, he actually hung that spot really for us to be able to hunt. He has other spots himself, like, his parents or whatnot, to be able to hunt, but he was just trying to get spots for us. And he originally hung it for us. And he always told us, when you ever come down, or if you ever come down, you got first dibs on that spot.
Uh-huh.
And that's just kind of how it went. We had the perfect wind for this evening. And he even said, if you don't get it done, tonight, then I get it Tuesday, because the wind's going to be perfect. The temperature, everything's supposed to be perfect. And I was like, deal. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to shoot the first shooter that comes out. It wasn't going to be
right.
Wait for him. It was going to be whatever shooter comes out, I'm taking.
Right.
So at 3:00, we had 3 does come in. I mean, right off the bat, right when the pressure started to rise, the snow started to slow down a little bit, but we still had some wind gusts. So 3 does were out in front of us, and then we had a shooter 8-point come in. I grabbed the crossbow because since this specific spot, I couldn't draw back with my bow. There was not enough room, because we, didn't buy a really big ground blind, just enough for 2 people to sit and to be able, and whoever's going to be shooting have a crossbow. So I didn't take my bow. I took the crossbow instead. So we're sitting there, and the 8-point comes out, and I was looking at him. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and take him. Dustin's like, all right, well, he was facing straight at us. Well, then a big spike popped out, and this spike they were probably 13 to 15 inches long. They were just a real big spike. And so he comes out and starts, kind of grazing. And then he makes a hard turn to our right and starts going into the briars, and then looks over at the ground blind, and he didn't like the ground blind. And then he took off. Well, with him taking off, they all took off. Right. They couldn't field. So we were like, all right, well, that happened. We'll just see what else. I know there's some does still they're just kind of hanging back in there. Well, then about 4:00 rolled around, some more does come out, and then 2 more bucks come out. And one, none of them being any shooters or anything like that, just kind of looking at it. They were young, very, 2.5-year-old deer. And that another spike didn't like the ground blind and took off, and then cleared the field again. So we were like, okay, it's got to be the ground blind. I don't think they've really seen it. They don't like it, but we're just going to continue sitting. Well, as we're sitting, Dustin turns around and nudges me, says, get ready. He goes, grab your bow. There's a shooter. And I happened to look to the right, and there was a big 9-point that we've been seeing on camera. He was coming in. And so I grabbed the crossbow, was getting ready, because they were only probably 10 yards away from us to our right. And that's just a bunch of briars that's all through. So you couldn't shoot through it, but you can see through it. And he walks, and then I couldn't see him anymore. And then all of a sudden, I just see him run off. just took off and bolted. And I'm like, what? And I happened just to look over, and then there's the big deer staring right at our ground blind. And he's 10 yards away from us. And he bobs his head back and forth, and then he takes off. So at that point, we're already depressed. We're already, we're about to throw in the towel because how many times they all cleared the field. And
what time is it now?
It was probably at that time it was 4:30.
Okay. So you still got some time.
Yep. I mean, we looked at time. Shooting light, I think, says end of shooting light was like 6:12, 6:11, somewhere around
Eastern time.
Yeah. But we were coming up with a game plan to come back at night and really even brush it even more in. So we'll have the opportunity on Tuesday. Well, as we were discussing it, he turned around and we saw a couple more does. We saw does coming out. Well, right behind them was that spike that got spooked, the other spike that got spooked, and they just started grazing and didn't care, pay any attention. Well, then Dustin's like, all right, there's a shooter. And I look over and it's that 8-point again. And he's coming back out. And I was getting ready because he was, he's probably about 20 yards away and he needed to clear my blind spot. Well, as I looked, then I saw the big deer and I saw him further back in the woods walking straight in. And Dustin's like, all right, you got a shot. And I was like, no, the big one's coming in.
Now we're waiting.
Yeah,
we're waiting.
Now we're gonna wait.
Yeah.
And the 8-point cleared my view. He never came actually out.
Oh, okay.
He came out and then turned to the left and faced straight at us. So I mean, he didn't give me a broad shot. He wouldn't do anything. So then the big one comes out, and instead of making a left like the 8-point did, he made a hard right. And he was following this fence line, and then he popped straight out. And as I'm sitting back, I actually went ahead and aimed, and I could see him, and he was quartered away. And then once the doe basically came out in front of him, and he kind of nudged the doe away, which then gave me a slight quarter. And right then and there, as soon as I knew I had that shot, I asked Dustin, I was like, am I clear? So I wouldn't hit the ground blind or anything else once I shot. He said, you're clear. And I took the shot and ended up being a double lung heart shot.
Wow. So did you get to watch him fall? How did that go?
So we did not watch him fall. He ran probably about 150 yards out in the corn area and then took a hard right, and then he fell just inside the fence line.
Was it one of those tail tucked, crouched, going as fast as he could? Or
yeah, I mean, he was going he was booking it, and
hurt bad.
We flipped spots, and we started talking, and hopefully we didn't spook him too bad because there's still deer out in the field,
right,
for him to have a shot,
right,
and that 8-point came back in, or that 9 came back in. And at that moment, I turned around, I called up my wife, and I told him, I was like, I just shot the big one. And she couldn't believe it. She thought we were joking at first. And Dustin ended up calling his dad. And we ended up shooting this deer probably like around 5, I'd say between 5:10 to 5:20-ish. We didn't know exactly that time because our phones were in our pockets. We didn't have, a real time frame. We just happened to go off of, we switched spots. We sat there for a bit, and then I made the phone call, and I just went off of that on how we were going to, what time to really tag it. So we made their phone calls or whatnot. And then finally I was like, I got to see blood.
That's what I was just about to ask. How confident were you that you had hit him?
Well, the time to pull the trigger from the time that I saw him, I don't remember. So like literally it happened so fast that
like a dream.
Yeah, I shot. The last thing I remember was him going in a straight line, running out, running in the corn.
Yeah.
So, and Dustin's like, he said, it's when it hit, it had a pop sound. sounded like it was lung. It jumped up about 2 foot in the air, mule kicked, and it just took off.
Oh yeah.
No, I didn't see any of that, so I didn't know.
You blacked out.
I did. I had no idea. So I went ahead. We got out. We didn't really celebrate yet. He's just like, man, he's like, give me a hug or whatnot. It's like, dude, I've hunted for a long time. I'm not going to celebrate until I actually have hands on him. Yeah. Until I see blood, till I see stuff. I've celebrated too early before, and it just never worked out. We go out there, see where I shot. We didn't see any blood. There was no hair. There was nothing. And at that point, I was a little like heart sunk, like where, I'm looking for my bolt, looking for everything. So we're like, all right, well, there's no blood around us. And let's go ahead and start tracking, where his tracks were in the snow. And as we got about 25, I would say about 30 yards away, we found blood. And it was basically a water hose of blood, just a straight line.
Pumping.
Yep. And so we followed it. And then sure enough, that's when we are like, yeah, this deer's dead. It's, it's an easy blood trail, especially on snow. And once we found him, it was a big celebration after that.
I can only imagine. I'm trying not to get chill bumps. You sitting here talking about it, dude. That is a giant. That is a giant. And so that was y'all's first year hunting the place, correct?
That's correct.
That is crazy. So crazy.
We, after that, once we got the tag on and everything, we still in disbelief about everything. The next day, we had him in his garage, and we were just kind of, he had to go to work, and I'm just sitting in his house, and I hadn't even gone out there and looked at him. Really looked at him because I'm still trying to process everything that just happened. And we didn't really know how big he really was. We knew he was over 200. We did know that. We were trying to guess between 215, 220, somewhere around there. I went ahead and I was like, hey, do you know anybody that does scoring? And he goes, yeah, I talked with Casey who did his deer. He goes, reach out to Toby. This is his card or whatnot. Give him a call, see if he's available to score it. So I called up Toby and I said, hey, are you available this evening or available today to be able to score my deer? And Toby at the time was like, yeah, that's fine. Well, with this, I was like, well, I shot a pretty big sized deer. I just don't know where to start. I didn't know where to start. I told him, I was like, I don't know where to start scoring it. And he's like, well, go ahead and send me some pictures or whatnot. And, we'll kind of go from there. I was like, all right. So I sent him the photos of and instantly he replies back saying, holy crap.
And then you heard his car door outside. Right?
Oh man, he instantly, called me back up and he goes, that is a monstrous deer. And I'm like, well, I tried to say it was a big deer. He goes, no, that's not a big deer. That's a monstrous deer. So we ended up actually still hunting that Tuesday night. Went out there. The wind was actually all right, wasn't terrible, but for some reason we didn't see anything. I mean, the pressure was good. Everything fell in line to be a good night. We didn't see a single thing. So we actually ended up packing up about 20 minutes early. Went ahead, loaded the deer up and drove out there. And then that's when he kind of posted, hey, here's some guesses on this deer. Once he got it scored and we were inside talking with him, and his wife turned around and actually told us the score of it, I was in complete disbelief. My mind just went blank.
Go ahead and share that number with us for folks who haven't seen the score.
So he ended up gross scoring right, or overall score right now is 266 and 5/8. And they counted it 3 different times.
So that's basically 2 trophy bucks.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh.
And until this date, the biggest deer I've ever shot was actually the 2020, and that was only a 140. That was the biggest deer I've ever seen in person, more or less even shot.
And a 140 is a heck of a great deer.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, I was happy as can be with it,
Right.
and I tell everybody else, I never would have thought this deer would even give me the opportunity, and seeing the comments and seeing the people's posts and seeing everybody's, had been hunting this deer for 2, 3, 4 years. And, he was sporadic. He was, within a 2 to 3 mile radius of where he was traveling. And we ended up being, I guess, like I tell everybody, at the right place at the right time, because we would get a photo of him once or twice a week, and that was it. And then he'd be gone for a week. And then we get him again for a day or two, and then he'd be gone. And we just happened to be there when he showed back up.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, since y'all saw him so early, it definitely seems like you were in one of his, living rooms. I mean, he obviously liked that location, man. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah, it's still surreal. It's still, obviously, there's a lot of people out there that, are mad about it. There's a lot of people that are, very happy. I mean, I was actually talking to a guy named Corey, believe it or not. And he'd been hunting this deer for a while. A bunch of his buddies been hunting it. And he had nothing but great positive things to say, and that's the big thing that I love about the hunting community, is that it doesn't, some people, they do get that, that bad reputation, but at the same time, you have a lot of people that are going to back you up and say, yeah, we've been hunting it, congratulations. It sucks that I wasn't able to get them, but at least you were able to get them and, enjoy that moment.
Hey, that's the thing about a free range whitetail. That's what makes it so special, is you're not in a fence, and you could get it. The neighbor can get it. And don't let the haters bother you, man, because they might, might make a lot of noise, but there's a whole lot more of us who are just happy to see you get that deer, and especially someone like you who's appreciative of it and understands just how special that moment is.
And it was. I mean, we were pretty excited about it. And I still look at when I brought home, my wife even turned around. She was, in disbelief about it. And I get constant people reaching out saying, so congratulations. And I'm just kind of, at this moment, it's just kind of living in that moment, because I will probably say, and I usually don't ever say it, I will probably never get in front of that big of a deer ever again. You don't ever really say never, but I never would have even thought first place to have a shot opportunity. But for the deer to come in at, once and then spook, and then possibly a second time with those other bucks, because he was hanging with those other bucks.
Right.
We just didn't see him, and they all got spooked 3 different times and then still come back in.
Yeah.
That you just don't hear stuff like that.
Right. So where is, I assume you're getting him mounted. What are you getting done?
So I'm doing what's called half pedestal.
Yep.
I wanted to do, at first I was thinking about doing the full body, but at that moment, I was like, it would take forever to get him back. And that's a lot of money to be able to actually shell out to be able to get a full body mount. So we're
those pedestals.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're doing a pedestal, with basically, instead of a barrel, we're doing a hickory base. And then it's going to have the accent background of where he was actually staying. So you have the cedars,
Nice.
some cedar in it, some grass in it, some briar stuff mixed in with it, along with the snow on the actual, because it was snowing that whole time. So
Right.
That's going to be cool, man. Yeah. And another thing about not getting him full body mounted is, look, there's going to be people that want you to show up to places with that deer. So
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot easier to transport with him on a pedestal. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And the cool thing that Casey's doing for this is that he's breaking it down in 3 different parts.
Okay.
So you can actually remove the deer and then remove the top portion of the actual scenery. And then you have the pedestal. It's going to be 3 different parts that you can be able to travel with it.
Right.
And move it instead of having one big piece.
Right.
Yeah.
So have you come up with a name for the deer yet?
So there's so many different names or whatnot that everybody had, but the one thing that came in common, and Dustin, he actually named it, and because he was every photo that had was basically, there's the old saying that, you know, when somebody flips you off, they're flipping you the bird, or, you know, giving you a raspberry or something like that. And every photo that we really had of him, and seeing the other photos, his tongue was always sticking out.
Really?
Yeah, if you go through the comments, you will see photo after photo of his tongue sticking out right at the camera.
That is crazy. So what do you call it?
He called him Raspberry because with all the stickers, with all the craziness on him, and then because his tongue constantly stuck out on every photo camera, you know, basically because deer can't flip you off, but they can turn around and stick their tongue at you.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's the Rasberry Buck then. I like that. That's awesome. That is cool, man.
But yeah, he's actually right here. I got him out.
That was my next question. I was going to ask if, who had the rack. Good night,
dude.
Wow.
He's, definitely, you know, obviously we still have him tagged up here. You want to make sure it's constant state. I got another tag on him. You know, make sure it's, you know, constant. He has so many different holes, rivets, grooves. I mean, it's just an all around monstrous buck.
Corey, in your right hand, it looks like he broke off a heck of a time.
So this right here, if he had this, he had to have had it when he was still in velvet. And we have a picture of him in velvet that this wasn't here. So he broke it off, had to beginning of velvet. Super early. There's also another drop in the backside here that also had it as well.
Wow.
Huh. On that one side. So no telling what happened.
So we're probably talking at least another 10 inches.
Easy.
Well, with that, if that was still there, probably most of these times were between 10 to 12 inches long.
That's two that were broke off.
Right.
Yep, that would be two that just there. And then we have about 4 more spots that he had broken off. This right up here was broken off.
Yep.
Back here was broken off. There's another couple of this right here. Another point was broken off. I think Toby said between 10 to 15 additional inches were broken off.
Wow. And it makes you wonder, was he fighting or was he just breaking them off on trees? I mean, I guess we'll never know.
I don't know. I think he was Dustin had probably, I would say, about 8 to 9 encounters with him. And he never came in within 80 yards. Every time was 75, 80, 100, never got anywhere close, but he never came into grunt calls. He never came into rattling. He never looked like he was aggressive. But then seeing photos back in 2020, he had half of his main beam on his right side completely broken off, gone.
Wow.
And then pretty much, you look at him, you're like, well, he looked like he was a fighter. There was another Big Ten in that area that I had him, obviously contact with, and he was very aggressive. So I'm wondering if these two had locked up, a couple times,
right?
But not.
How much do you think that weighs right there?
Probably between 10 to 12 pounds.
It looks pretty heavy.
Yeah, easily. I mean, I think his bottom bases right here were 6. I think they were 6 5/8, 6 6/8, something around there. Almost 7 inches. Up here on the main base was 6 inches. So he didn't drop much from the base all the way around.
So Dustin gets first shot next year, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, the saying is, if you shoot a deer, you're first, you should be the first one to be able to touch him. And actually, believe it or not, Dustin is actually the first one to be able to put hands on him.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to even get on this deer if it wasn't for him, or even the farmers themselves. I think, I'm actually going back up to Ohio. and show the farmers, the actual rack. I apologize to them that we didn't do it when it all happened, but with everything going on, it was just kind of hectic. I had to be back home on Wednesday morning and small little time frame to be able to try to get everything done. So I'm making a special trip up there so they can see it, talk with them, thank them again. It was a blessing to be able to, to have that small little opportunity, because the spot that we were able to hunt I would say a 15-yard by 20-yard area.
Wow. And I imagine you have a few neighbors who would like to get their hands on the rack.
So the neighbors of the farmers and whatnot, they also have the sheds.
Right.
From years. So they, obviously they're going to want to look, that's, he wants to gather everybody up so they can take a look at him and be able to touch him as well, because apparently that deer has been a legendary deer for years.
Man, that's awesome that you were going back up. That's a good touch, man.
Absolutely.
Good on you for that.
And you'll get to hear some really cool stuff about the deer too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. People have seen him out in the field at 11 o'clock during the rut, just running out in fields. There's so many different stories that I've heard so far. But I had, like I said, I couldn't have done this myself. A lot of people were like, well, you shot the buck, it's a buck of a lifetime. And that might be the case, but a lot of it goes to a good friend, Dustin. A lot of it goes to the farmers to be able to allow us to be able to do that.
Your wife for talking you into going up?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot of thankfulness to that.
Yeah.
And I tell her, I say it was more of a team effort. This wasn't just my deer. This is literally everybody's deer. Yeah, I'm the one who pulled the trigger on it, but there's so many people involved to try to help, be able to make this happen. And it's just a complete blessing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm speaking for everybody here at Buckmasters. We just want to say congratulations, and it couldn't have happened to a better guy, man. I'm really happy for you. Congratulations, and get another one next year.
I don't think I'll ever beat this one, but I can continue to try. We will, it's not going to stop me from trying to, beat a bigger record, but at the same time, I'm also humble about it. And I'm just going to keep on keeping on, hunting is a passion of mine, and it's not, just because I bypassed the dream that I've always had to kill a 200-inch deer. I'm going to keep going, and it's not going to be the ending of my dream. I'm going to try to even hit even higher, or at least, keep trying to succeed better, I guess.
There you go.
Well, congratulations, man. That was awesome. What a great story. Can't wait to hear other stories. We'll keep in contact. Can't wait to hear other stories that you learn about the deer, and maybe we'll cross paths, because I would love to put my hands on that deer. Good gosh, man, that's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we I don't know all in outs. I've never been to any shows or anything like that, but from what Casey had told me, he says, don't be surprised that people will try to get you to come to these shows, to be
Absolutely.
able, so you can talk about them. Everybody's going to want to see this deer.
No doubt. It's impressive, to say the least.
Yep. Well, good job, Corey. We appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, man, thanks for taking the time out of your day. I know things are crazy right now, and, like you said, keep living the moment, because, like you said, you may not have this feeling like this again, but live it up, enjoy it. And, again, we appreciate having you with us.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's a good honor, and it's definitely a pleasure meeting you guys and telling you guys definitely the story.
Absolutely, man. Well, we appreciate it. I'm going to close it out. Thanks, Corey, for being with us, me and Ken. And this is the end of this outdoor podcast. Y'all make sure you go listen to our other ones, and have a good evening. We'll see you.
Thank you.